I was sipping my morning coffee, the steam curling up and mixing with the chill of the early fall air when I heard the unmistakable sound of someone marching across my yard. I looked up from my cup, and there she was, Karen, president of the HOA. She stood like a drill sergeant, hands on her hips, clipboard in hand, glaring at my vegetable garden like I had just planted a crime scene. Behind me, my chickens clucked lazily in the yard, unaware that their peaceful existence was about to be challenged by a woman who, frankly, had too much time on her hands. "Illegal farm," Karen shouted, pointing at my tomato patch like it was a rogue operation threatening national security. I nearly choked on my coffee. "Illegal farm?" I repeated, raising an eyebrow. "Karen," I said slowly, "this is a tomato patch. And 6 chickens." Karen huffed like I had just questioned the laws of physics. "Yes, illegal. This is a residential neighborhood, not some backwoods livestock operation," she snapped, making it sound like I was running a secret cattle ranch instead of keeping a few hens and growing tomatoes for my personal use. "The HOA does not allow unsightly farming operations," she continued, as if there were some unwritten law forbidding peas and corn. She flipped a page on her clipboard, probably thinking she was presenting Eve Y. Denke in a courtroom. "You'll need to remove all of it immediately. Unauthorized livestock, unapproved gardening." And she squinted like she was searching for the worst offense, an unregistered shed. I glanced over at my shed, an old, wooden tool shed that had probably been here since the neighborhood was built. "You mean the shed that came with the property?" I asked, trying to hide the smirk creeping onto my face. She ignored me. "I'm giving you a warning. Either remove all of this," she gestured at the garden and chickens, "or I'll be forced to report you." I leaned back against the porch railing and smiled my most polite smile, the one I usually reserved for drunk people resisting arrest. "I appreciate your concern, Karen, but I own this property. I'm well within my rights to have a small garden and a few chickens." Karen narrowed her eyes. "We'll see about that," she said, her voice dripping with that smug tone she had perfected. With a dramatic turn, she stomped away, already dialing her phone as if the cops were on speed dial. I let out a breath and took another sip of my coffee, a small chuckle escaping as I watched her retreat. A part of me almost felt bad for her. Almost. She had no idea she had just called the cops on the county sheriff. You see, I'd moved to this neighborhood for peace. I'd been in law enforcement for over 20 years, high-stress situations, criminals, the never-ending paperwork. When I found this quiet cabin on the outskirts of town, surrounded by land, I thought it was perfect. A place to relax, to grow vegetables, raise a few chickens, and enjoy the simple life. But then I met Karen. Within my first week, she had found my next-door neighbor for Leah of wying his trash cans out 5 minutes past the scheduled pickup time. She cited another neighbor for Hav wying grass that was a little too long. I started hearing rumors about how she ran this neighborhood like a dictatorship, handing out fines for the smallest things, all in the name of community improvement. But she wasn't improv wying anything. She was just wielding her power, pushing people around like they were nothing. And now I had become her target. Not even 10 minutes after Karen stomped off, I heard sirens. I glanced up, still holding my coffee, and watched as a squad car pulled into the driveway. 2 officers got out, looking around like they were walking into a crime scene. Karen appeared behind them, arms crossed, smug look on her face. "That's him," she pointed at me. "He's the one running an illegal farming operation." The officers exchanged glances before turning toward me. I gave them a friendly wave. One of the officers, Officer Daniels, blinked a couple of times, and then his eyes widened. "Sheriff Hudson," he said, clearly recognizing me. Karen looked at him like she had just been slapped in the face. "You know this criminal?" she asked, eyes wide with confusion. Daniels cleared his throat and said, "Karen, this is Sheriff Jake Hudson. He's our boss." The air shifted. Karen went pale. That can't be right," she stammered. "He's breaking the rules." Daniels rubbed the back of his neck, trying to hide a grin. Karen, he's literally the sheriff." I gave her a casual smile and pulled my badge out of my pocket. "Yep, that's me." Her jaw clenched, and she muttered, "That doesn't change anything. You're still violating HOA rules." Officer Johnson, who had been silent up until then, finally broke the tension and chuckled. "Ma'am, we're county law enforcement. HOA rules don't override state and local laws." Karen's face twisted, but for once, she had no words. I stepped forward, suppressing a grin. "Karen, I appreciate you looking out for the neighborhood," I said. "But as sheriff, I take every report seriously, so I'll be launching a full investigation into this matter. Her eyes lit up for a second, thinking she had won, before I continued. And while I'm at it, I might as well check for any irregularities in the HOA's operations. Misuse of funds, illegal fines, things like that. Her smug expression evaporated. That won't be necessary, she stammered. Oh, I think it will, I said, pulling out my notepad and clicking my pen for effect. HOA fraud is a serious issue, Karen. And I've been hearing some interesting things about how fines have been handled around here. Daniels couldn't hold it in anymore and burst out laughing. Karen took a step back, eyes darting around as if looking for an escape. This is harassment, she yelled. I smiled. I'm just enforcing the law, Karen. For the first time since I'd met her, she had no response. She turned sharply on her heel and stormed back to her house, slamming the door behind her. The officers shook their heads, amused. Sheriff, Daniels said, grinning. You realize she's probably going to try something else, right? Oh, I'm counting on it, I said, tossing back the last of my coffee. This is going to be fun. The next morning, I woke up to a letter taped to my front door. In big, bold letters, it read, Urgent Notice of Violation. Beneath it, a laundry list of accusations. Unauthorized livestock, unapproved gardening, and me favorite creating an unsightly environment that supposedly lowered neighborhood appeal. The fine? A cool do law 500. Karen wasn't wasting any time. I chuckled, shaking my head. I grabbed the letter and walked straight to her house. Her yard was pristine, every flower pot arranged in perfect symmetry. I knocked on the door, and after a few moments, Karen swung it open with a smug look on her face. I see you received your violation notice, she said, practically glowing with satisfaction. I held up the paper. I did. It's a nice piece of fiction, but I have a couple of questions. Her arms crossed, and she raised an eyebrow. There's nothing to question. You're in violation of HOA guidelines, and as president, it's my duty to enforce them. I gestured toward my house. Karen, it's a small garden and a few chickens. I'm not running a commercial farm. There's no rule against personal vegetable patches or backyard hens. She sniffed, chin held high. Actually, I found an old clause in the HOA charter that prohibits livestock and agricultural activities. I fought the urge to laugh. An old clause? I asked, almost sarcastic. From when? 1987. She hesitated, then muttered, Yes, 1987. I couldn't help but grin. Karen, that rule was probably written to prevent people from raising cows and pigs in their backyard. A couple of hens and tomato plants don't count as an agricultural activity. Her eyes flickered with irritation. That's not for you to decide. I leaned in, lowering my voice just enough to make sure she understood I wasn't playing. Actually, it is. Because as the county sheriff, I also enforce property laws. And what you're doing here? It's harassment. Karen stiffened, but quickly masked it with a smug smile. I'm simply following protocol. If you disagree, you're welcome to bring it up at the next HOA meeting. I took a step back, making sure my badge was visible. You know, Karen, I did a little reading last night. Turns out county regulations override HOA rules when it comes to property rights. And from what I can tell, you've been handing out fines with no legal backing. Her smile twitched. That's nonsense. I pulled out my small notebook. Is it? Because I also spoke to a few of our neighbors. Apparently, you fined Mr. Thompson do law 400 for having a wooden fence that didn't match the community aesthetic. You fined the Johnsons do law 200 because their Christmas decorations were up 2 days past your acceptable removal window. And then there's Mrs. Parker, you fined the 80-year-old widow do law 300 because her mailbox wasn't painted the right color. Karen's expression hardened. That is all within my jurisdiction, she said stiffly. I clicked my tongue. That's where you're wrong. You see, when an HOA starts issuing fines outside of legally approved regulations, it becomes fraud. And fraud, that's a crime. For the first time, I saw a flicker of real fear in her eyes. It was gone as quickly as it came, replaced by stubborn defiance. You can't prove anything, she said, clutching her clipboard tighter. I smiled. Oh, I think I can, Karen. And with that, the war had officially begun. The next few weeks were a mix of absurdity and satisfaction. Karen's retaliation was swift. She called the county office to file a complaint against me, claiming I was endangering the neighborhood with my reckless farming practices. I had to hold back laughter. Apparently, my chickens were now considered a threat to public safety. But I played along. I had Daniel send in a county compliance officer to inspect my property. The officer, after a brief look at my backyard, confirmed what I already knew. Everything was legal. There was nothing Karen could do to stop it. And so, the game continued. The next HOA meeting was packed. Word had gotten around, and for the first time in a long while, the neighborhood was alive with energy. People who had never attended an HOA meeting before were eager to witness what was about to unfold. Karen sat at the head of the table, still holding her clipboard like it was a weapon. But this time, I was ready. I walked in with my deputy Daniels and the county compliance officer. We carried folders thick with documents. Karen's face twitched as I sat across from her, calmly setting my files down on the table. Before she could say a word, I flipped open the first folder and slid a document across to her. Before you continue, Karen, I'd like you to explain these. Karen blinked, looking down at the papers in confusion. What is this? She stammered. The financial records of the HOA, I said casually. Or should I say, the lack of financial records? The room went dead silent. Karen's usual smugness was gone. She opened her mouth to speak, but couldn't find the words. I gestured to the compliance officer, who adjusted his glasses and began speaking. As per the sheriff's request, we conducted a preliminary audit of the HOA's financial transactions over the past 5 years. What we found was concerning. People in the room leaned in, their curiosity piqued. Mrs. Parker, the sweet elderly widow, pursed her lips, already suspecting something was off. We discovered, the officer continued, that overdue law $440,000 had been collected in fines over the last 3 years, but there are no official records of how that money was spent. In fact, nearly half of those funds are unaccounted for. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Karen's face turned an alarming shade of red. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. The officer flipped to the next page. We also found several instances where homeowners were fined for violations that don't exist in the official HOA charter. The room erupted in murmurs. Mr. Thompson, the neighbor who had been fined for his fence, shook his head in disbelief. So, you've been stealing from us? He asked incredulously. Karen let out a nervous laugh, but no one joined her. I flipped through the papers again. And let's not forget about the catered lunches and the spa treatments, all charged to HOA funds, I said, glancing at Karen. 16 charges for high-end meals and CERVYCES in the last year alone. Pretty fancy for an organization that's supposed to be using funds for neighborhood maintenance. The room exploded with anger. People began shouting, accusing her of fraud, demanding to know where the money had gone. Karen's carefully constructed composure crumbled before my eyes. This is a witch hunt, she yelled, slamming her hands on the table. I raised an eyebrow. Is it? Because from where I'm standing, you're guilty of something much worse than petty HOA violations. You've been stealing from your own neighbors. And that's a crime. Karen's body stiffened as I continued. And as of now, I'm recommending a full investigation into HOA fraud and embezzlement. Karen's chair screeched as she shot up from the table, pointing a trembling finger at me. You can't do this. Oh, I think I can, I said, calmly pulling out my notepad. And trust me, you'll want to get legal counsel, Karen. And just like that, the HOA meeting that had been her kingdom for years fell apart. The room was silent for a moment before someone clapped. Then another, and another. Soon, the entire room was cheering. Karen's reign had officially ended. Her fraudulent active ties had been exposed for everyone to see. And for the first time, the neighborhood was at peace. I didn't want glory. I didn't want power. I just wanted a simple life. And Karen had almost taken that from me. But in the end, I got something much better, justice. So what would you do if Karen came after you? Would you stand your ground like I did? Or would you try to play by her rules? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this. And remember, if you see someone acting like a Karen, maybe it's time to bring in the sheriff. Thanks for watching.